Hello. This video I'm going to be putting a spin on a common ancient aliens hypothesis called the Anunnaki theory. And this is a theory that has been put forth by an ancient astronaut theorist or ancient alien theorist named Zecharia Sitchin in his 7-volume series of books titled The Earth Chronicles. And I've titled this presentation, Were the Anunnaki Atlanteans? And the subtitle of Bringing the Aliens Down to Earth, because that is exactly what I intend to do. Just a brief overview of Zecharia Sitchin. Zecharia Sitchin lived to the age of 90. He recently passed away. And he is one of the only people in the world, one of the very few people in the world who supposedly has the ability to translate ancient Sumerian and Akkadian. And he translated these tablets, which he argued that these tablets said that they spoke of an alien race from a distant planet named Nibiru that colonized the Earth 450,000 years ago. And the word Nibiru might be familiar if you follow the TV show Ancient Aliens or are a believer in the ancient alien hypothesis or theory. And supposedly there's a distant planet, the 12th planet, that revolves around the sun, very, very far away. It still hasn't been discovered. And supposedly these aliens from this planet named Nibiru came to their Earth 450,000 years ago to search for gold in Africa. And these Anunnaki colonists, or these Anunnaki aliens, these miners, became so displeased with their working conditions that the Anunnaki leaders decided to create a hybrid race of the Anunnaki and this primitive species of man, which we can call Homo erectus, that would be created to replace the miners. And according to Sitchin, the Homo Sapiens, we ourselves are this hybrid race of people that were created by these Anunnaki aliens. Now that's an interesting theory. And if it were true, that would be certainly shocking, but we really don't know where we came from, and so it seems like any explanation is as good as the next. But the problem with this explanation is that it sounds very, very familiar to something we already know has happened between human beings in history. Let me present these two ideas side by side. On the left is the interpretation of the Anunnaki as aliens. And on the right side is the interpretation of the Anunnaki as people, human beings from an advanced civilization, which we can, for better or worse, call Atlantis. Sorry about that. There's some construction going on outside, so I'm going to close the window here. And on the left, of course, is the explanation that Sitchin wrote. And so the problem with how people have really understood Sitchin's claims is that they are either taken to be true word for word, or they are wholly rejected. But what if Sitchin was correct in his overall understanding of the story, and that there was some form of some external people or entities that came to a different land, then settled that land, and then created a hybrid race? What if that overall concept, that big picture story plot is actually correct, but the specific characters and the details of those individual elements and characters of those story have been mistaken, instead of the entire story being completely bogus, as the vast majority of skeptics believe? If we just substitute Nibiru as an ancient distant planet and the alien race of the Anunnaki for an advanced human species, an advanced human civilization that came not from a different planet but from a different continent, which could be interpreted as so, in a primitive society, as so far away that it could be, for practical purposes, a different planet some time ago. And we know that this has actually happened where in history, and we know that there weren't any aliens involved. We have the natives who are living in a primitive continent with not very much advanced technology, but with an abundance of natural resources. And a comparatively advanced civilization, namely the Spanish conquistadors and the colonists, were searching for gold in this new continent that they so-called discovered. And then the Spanish colonists became displeased with their working conditions because they wanted to get rich and find that gold, but they didn't really want to work for it. So they forced the native population to work to mine the gold. And ultimately, it was decided that through this process of interbreeding, that the Spanish colonists mixed with the native population to create a new hybrid race. Homo sapiens are this hybrid race according to the alien theory, and the Latin Americans are this hybrid race according to actual historical events that we know happened. This is almost a word for word equivalence, essentially. How likely is it that an alien civilization that would have completely different species would act exactly as we know human beings have historically acted when we have contact between a relatively advanced culture and a more primitive culture? We have that clash of civilizations to describe it. That's why I think that the Anunnaki are actually just human beings. The story is convincing enough in its overall outline to be true. It's just that the characters have been misunderstood, have been misidentified. And if we is that the same process of colonization and discovery that took place only 500 years ago actually happened thousands, if not tens of thousands of years ago. That history has actually repeated itself. That specific process of discovery and colonization didn't just happen once. Is that more likely? Because we know that human beings were actually existed tens of thousands of years ago. We don't know if aliens existed and if they visited us. So I think it's much more likely that the Anunnaki are actually human beings. And this historical analogy between the Anunnaki and ancient humans is even more accurate if you substitute British colonialism, if you replace the Spanish with the British, because the English colonists who originally settled Jamestown in Virginia, they wanted to grow tobacco. They wanted to discover gold, but when they found that they couldn't find any gold, they tried to farm tobacco, and it was successful. And they originally used the original workers were indentured servants that had migrated from England to hopefully eventually acquire land when their term was complete. But then these indentured servants really became so-called displeased with their working conditions, which were essentially equivalent to temporary slavery, and ultimately it was decided to import a new labor force that would do that work. And so, that labor force was ultimately an enslaved labor force for centuries. And it's similar to how the Earth Chronicles and Zecharia Sitchin claim that the Anunnaki miners created this slave race to do their labor. How likely is it that we have an alien civilization that creates social institutions and economic institutions that are exactly like the ones that actually evolved in a similar situation that we know happened in history? These aliens act too much like humans. Their intentions are too human-like. And in addition, we know that the native people originally saw the Spanish as gods. That's the interpretation of the Spanish that the natives had. And so if you read this narrative that claimed that these aliens, so-called aliens, were actually gods from a distant planet, that's exactly how the native population saw the Spanish. Again, this is too similar. So my conclusion is that the Earth Chronicles and the theory of the Anunnaki and Nibiru is actually a mistranslated account of a real historical event of discovery and colonization that actually featured the Atlanteans in substitution for the Anunnaki gods, so to speak.